Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today I'm joined by Jack. Jack, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
I'm Jack Schutzbach. I've HR leader. I've worked in human resources and consulting and directly as the HR leader for the company for almost 3 decades now. So a
Mhm.
lot of experience well before and well after the pandemic with flexible work schedules.
So tell us a little bit more about what is going on with flexible work schedules in your company and what you see as their benefits.
Okay, and I during the pandemic worked in a few different situations.
Mhm.
One where it was required, where we were essential workers and everyone had to be.
Mm.
Came back earlier this year where the workers were remote for almost 3 years and
Mhm.
just returning back to office for the first time after a 3 year remote situation. And so they got pretty used to working remotes.
Mhm.
And some people moved further away from the office. And so, the advantages of remote work, I'd say a vast majority of our team members like the not having to drive to work. And where I'm at now, we're inside and just outside of LA. So working in a
Mm.
major city, of course, there's major traffic
Yeah.
all the time. So remote work gets you out of that.
Mhm.
Also gives you that flexibility. The workers claim they're more productive. Other advantages from the company side, though, are it should allow us to reduce our office footprint and
Mhm.
have office space is quite expensive, so it
Sure.
should help us with that.
Mhm.
I've not seen the total math on that because we end up having enough space. It just sits empty a few days a week, couple days a week. The other one too is with flexible work. It can allow you to hire people, the talent you need, well
Mm.
beyond the geographic space of your office. So those
That
are
makes
some of the
sense.
major advantages
Mhm.
that I have
Yeah,
seen.
excellent. Tell us a little bit about what you see as the challenges. So you joined a company that had remote workers for 3 years. Now they're starting to come back to the office. What do you see as some of the challenges associated with remote work?
Okay, the again, well before the pandemic, we did have remote work,
Mhm.
and a lot of those remote workers were in very specialized jobs, and they were specific individuals that had a proven track record to be able to self-manage themselves. So we've always had it. It's just
Makes
a
sense.
very small number of jobs and a very small number of people. With the pandemic, everyone became a remote worker overnight.
Mhm.
And as we know, some jobs are more suited for remote workers, and some individuals are better at self-managing. Others are probably need a little more leadership
Mm.
oversight, putting it politely. And so with that, that's one of the big challenges I think is now that everyone was out there, now bringing them back. The
Mhm.
challenge was the folks that had moved further away. It was, and still we get some noise in certain corners. Why can't we be remote? Why can't we be remote all the time?
Mhm.
Um, and so it, part of it for me is if work targets can be achieved.
Mhm.
And again, some jobs are more transactional. Some people you can see the work they do, they are achieving results. I do believe, though, you also have unevenness. Even when you were in office all the
Mhm.
time, you had some workers that had much higher productivity than
Sure.
others. I think that's just more pronounced, but we don't have a very good way of measuring that. And
Mm.
so I don't measure people on how many hours they sit in front of their computer. And I think we've all
Mhm.
seen stories about employees using mouse jigglers, so it looks like they're working on their computer. And so I
Mm.
don't think we should track or monitor that way. It needs to be a trust but verify approach. And
Mhm.
I just think in a lot of cases we need to do a better job with that.
Mm.
The other challenge for me, though, is really is new hires. So missing the synergies
Okay.
and energies of bringing people together,
Mm,
brainstorming, and then onboarding people. So if you're a new hire,
mm,
so if you and I work together for 10 years and we're apart, we know each other. But bringing new
yeah.
people onto the team to try to figure out who to go to, and building that rapport with other team members, and also when you work a long time with somebody, if you and I have a professional disagreement, you know what, we get over it, we'll go out for lunch or
Sure.
something else. When you're all remote and you've never had that chance to build that
Mm,
camaraderie up front, and now we have differences, I think those differences are hard to patch up at times
mm.
when you haven't worked together. So those are some of the things that I have seen, with people that have been remote for too much or too long.
Okay, that's interesting. So let's dive into a little bit into that a little bit and see how you've worked on handling them. So for context, I've helped 26 companies figure out their hybrid work and remote work, and the things that you're mentioning about new hires, collaboration, conflicts, performance management are definitely issues. So let's talk about performance management first. So here's an example of how companies I've worked with, I've advised them to handle. I've advised them to in, it can be hard to measure performance, of course, for some areas. For sales, it might be easier, for customer service. For other functions, it might be harder. So what I've done is I've had managers, instead of having that once annual performance review and management by walking around, is to have weekly or twice a month meetings with their subordinates where they set goals for 3 to 5 goals tied to their broader KPIs for the team for at a meeting, and then in 2 weeks or in 1 week, depending on the role, they meet again. They see how well the person did on achieving those 3 to 5 goals, and then they coach them on problem solving if they run into any problems, solving and addressing whatever, achieving the goals better, and then they set 3 to 5 goals for the next 1 to 2 week period. And that really, I found, helps with addressing some of the challenges that hybrid workers, remote workers face with performance management. So I'm curious what you think about such a strategy and what you've done yourself to help address performance management within hybrid and remote settings.
Well, and to your point is having those touch points and reviewing goals weekly or biweekly. When you do that once a year annual review, that's really, I've used that more as just a snapshot so that you
Mhm,
get a formal review of everyone once a year at least to see where
mhm,
things stand. But performance discussions, performance enhancements, something that should be going on throughout the year. Again, based on the nature of the job, even some jobs that are more transactional, is coming up with how are you improving things? How are you making
mhm,
things better?
mhm,
So to
mhm.
have those conversations and to have due dates, and I always tell people as well, I don't want to hear on the due date that it didn't get done.
Yeah.
I want you to do what you can to get it done on time. But if you see things slipping beyond your control,
Mhm,
that's the time you need to come get me involved and let me help you, bridge that gap or reach out to the other person, whatever we can do to get to hold to that timeline. Or, we'll agree then, because of circumstances, we can extend the timeline.
mhm,
But let's not, I don't like being surprised, and coach others. Don't be
mhm,
surprised on a due date.
mhm,
But otherwise, I agree with your approach. Yes, with smaller intervals and setting
mhm,
goals, bite-sized goals that you can see that you're still working towards that bigger end.
mhm. So do you think with that approach, would that help address some of the concerns about some of the people who have variable performance when they're working some or all of their time remotely? I'm curious what you think about that.
Um, Again, I think one thing I used to use before remote work is
Mhm,
I hate the word fired, but I'll have to use it for this example. Is if you are working on something for one of your top leaders and you've got to get it done today, another top leader calls and says, I need this today, or
mhm,
you're in trouble.
mhm,
And so there's no way I can do it. So I open my office door and I look out in front of me. Who's
mhm,
that one person that I would definitely give it to? And who's the one person I definitely would not give it to?
mhm,
That's how. I don't like force ranking, but we all know the people on our teams that are more reliable and can get more done than others.
Sure.
And so I'm a big believer, though, we have to hold, it's not fair to your high performers. We got to hold everyone accountable.
Sure.
And so for everyone on the team is to make sure you play to people's strengths, and we all have different strengths. You've got to play to their strengths. Hopefully they have some strengths that benefit my team. But yes, you got to keep working on those folks. But with metrics and KPIs, there has to be a way to measure what they're getting done for you. And you know what? We all have days we're more productive than others. So I don't like measuring people on an hourly or daily basis, but we got to make sure that we're still making progress in the end. So to have those shorter intervals, but holding everyone on the team accountable.
Great. And now I want to go to the other point that you mentioned about new people. I think that's a huge issue, and definitely a lot of companies have been struggling with that and haven't been asking employees to come to the office, back to the office, return to office for that purpose. I'm curious, you were talking about the junior folks who definitely need some time in the office to learn the culture of the company, to build connections. And you were saying that senior people who are more experienced, they can spend more time working remotely. And I've seen that with a number of my other clients where we bring people on for onboarding into the office. They spend time onboarding. We get them some mentors, a couple of mentors. They start by building the relationship with the mentors inside the office. They spend more time inside the office. But then once they build those relationships, they can work more time remotely, that they can have more flexibility. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about such a dynamic in terms of having junior people spend more time in the office and getting mentoring, getting onboarding, and then as they establish those relationships, allow them to have more flexibility.
Well, I believe in that more flexibility, for sure. Part of it, though, is, on the solution mode side of things. I'm still a believer, too, that being in person is critically important. And so to me, back in the good old days, several years back, I've always done the merit plans. And I can tell you, every year when you look at your final merit plan, it gets tweaked by your executives. You could always see upward tweaks for those in line of sight to the top leaders. So, visibility is key, and working together with people. So part of my solution is that people see the advantages of coming into the office and working in person. There's so much. We're having a meeting right now, and you walk out of meetings, and I can tell you, union negotiations, how many times you're in meetings, it's an exchange, but the real meeting happens after the meeting or before the meeting. And so those informal ad hoc discussions that happen in hallways or exiting a meeting or something else, there's a lot that happens in those moments. So part of the thing for me is if you get some of your leadership team, so just hypothetically, if you say we're going to be a hybrid work environment, but instead of coming in the days you want, we're all going to be in office Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We're all in those days. If get your leaders, your managers or directors and above, to all come in a fourth day. And that one gives us a day to talk to each other without the interruptions of everyone else. But two, it's my hypothesis that a lot of your high achievers will start coming in on that fourth day as well, because they'll see the advantages of being there with the dynamic leaders. And so with newer workers, yes, as they become more seasoned, they don't need to come in as often. But if you absent out all of your higher seniority people, there's no benefits for those newer workers to come in, because they're not going to be learning from anyone. So I think hybrid approach is one for me is still gives people flexibility, but at the same time, it's a chance for us all to work together and build off those synergies and idea sharing and experience.
Yes, if you give them the flexibility, there's a natural sorting of people who are interested in progression in the company and development versus those who care most about work-life balance and who kind of just are not as interested in progressing. I'm curious what you think about that.
I'm sorry, say that again.
If you give people flexibility, then the high achievers who want to progress in the company and grow will be coming in more often. And those who care more about work-life balance and just their family life, they will be coming in less. So there's a natural sorting of sorts that happens, right?
Yes. For the most, I do believe that what you said is true to a good extent. There are some people, and again, I always say, there's exceptions for exceptional people. And I do know some people that I don't know how they do it, how their brain works, but I'm envious of how the work they can get done and how they get it done or when they get it done. I used to work with one leader. He was a peer of mine, and he would just go around listening and talking to people, but yet miraculous work came out of him. And I don't know when he did it. But he really helped move our organization forward. So but for the most part, I think those that will you'll gravitate towards those key leaders. And so but I've also worked where before the pandemic on our leadership team, the top 9 of us, we worked in 7 different locations. Now we were all Midwest United States. We also had overseas reporting relationships, but we were in 7 different offices throughout the Midwest and in Canada, but yet we crossed over with our travels enough that we would, still be available for each other. So if I was going to be in Cincinnati, I would say, hey, I'm going to be down there next week, next Tuesday, Wednesday. So others would know. So, well, they could also be there. So even when you were working in the same office a lot of time, if your company has a larger expanse, you still had to make a point. We all need to be in the office on Mondays for our meeting, our leadership meeting. So with a lot of your leaders traveling, they're working at a location, but they're not working at the same location. So that's been going on for forever. And so this idea that you have to be in the office 5 days a week, I think that is definitely gone. I think we have the working tools. We have, video conferences and everything else that allow us to not be in the same place. But I can tell you, even the best Teams calls are a distant second to an in-person meeting.
Now, as we finish up, what do you think is going to be the future of flexible work? It sounds like technology you think that has not been around before has made it better. So maybe that will make flexible work, remote work, hybrid work easier. Just in general, what do you think will be the future of flexible work?
The genie is not going back in the bottle. It's remote work is here. And I like hearing futurists speak a lot. And there was one I heard him before the pandemic, probably 5 to 8 years, and talked about how millennials think, how they work, and how we work 30 years. Okay, I don't want to date myself. How we worked several years ago. You had your file cabinets. You would go dig through file cabinets for last year's report or something, and you would spend hours just digging for stuff. Now you can look it up at your fingertips. So work happens much more efficiently and effectively now. But there are things you learn from digging in and hammering it out the way we used to as well. So I think younger workers have a lot to learn from us. The part for me that we need to do a better job with is training our leaders. We still struggled teaching managers and leaders how to manage a team of people sitting right outside of their office. And now with this remote work, we need to teach the leaders how to make sure that we're getting effective work out of our teams. And again, I don't like micromanagement. I cringe with that, and that's not the way to do it. We need to have methods for trust but verify, how we know work is getting done, how we're improving our organization, and that we're all doing our part in making that happen. So I think and I actually looked online preparing for this meeting because there was one thought internal versus external. I think most of this has to happen internally, but I think I looked online, there are a lot of programs out there on how to train and teach managers to be more productive leaders of remote workers. And I think we need to, I think a lot of training went away with the pandemic as well. So I know at my company this coming year, we're going to put a real strong emphasis on getting training and development really ramped up for all of our team members, but really on the leadership side too, is to make sure that they can manage their team members from on-site and the ones in the field or working remote a couple days a week.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, Jack. That was very helpful.
Well, thank you for for having me today. I really appreciate it.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show.